Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of What Megan Thinks. So, as usual, this is my opinion. If it helps you, great. If it doesn't, fine. But I got home from the barn working all day yesterday and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna watch me a little film. So I turned on Netflix and I just got sucked into this show called The Sins of Our Mother. And I never usually watch murder shows. I'm just not attracted to them, but this had me rolling. So it's about this woman who basically she's part of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and she starts to hear a voice in her head that I guess says it's God, Jesus, or the angel Moroni, which is part of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and starts hearing a voice in her head making her believe that she's part of this group that is going to start new earth. The apocalypse is coming, Jesus' second coming is coming, and she is special or chosen to start this new church or this new group of people, right? And immediately I'm like, oh shit. Oh my gosh, another one. These stories have like patterns. This isn't the only woman or person like this has happened to. There was a woman in the 90s or the early 2000s. Her husband, I forget her name, but her husband was a pediatrician. And while he was at work, she heard a voice in her head that said it was Jesus and told her to kill her children because that's how you would save them or make sure they go to heaven. And the same thing happens to this woman on this Netflix show, is she basically began to believe that her children were possessed by the devil, and the only way to get rid of the entity was to kill the children. What? So this is like a very dramatic example of being manipulated by a negative entity, right? And it will appear to you as you want to see it. So dark energy, basically how it works, anyone who does like a satanic witch, who does black magic, there'll be like a coating on their energy field and it's an illusion. And it uses the light energy to project back to you what you want to see. This happens with people channeling demonic entities or like narcissists, people like that. But yeah, so I forgot my train of thought. So it looks like that, right? So these women started to hear Jesus in their head because that's what they were accustomed to, or that's what they were programmed to believe. So there's a lot of similarities in these stories. There's also a UFO documentary called Heaven's Gate and I think it was in the 70s, where this guy believed that he needed to get his followers ready. There was a special group of people that were chosen, and they were going to be taken off planet by UFOs or by spaceships, and the way to get there was by killing yourself. So they use the same story over a period of time. This is why I say, like, psychic abilities or hearing a voice inside your head, it's not uncommon in the universe. It's just an ability. It doesn't mean that you are chosen by God necessarily. It's just a genetic ability. You know, reptilians, greys, they are telepathic too. And most races in the universe can use telepathy and communicate psychically. It's just that the human race, we've been indoctrinated, so we are easily fooled into thinking that someone hearing a voice in their head is channeling a god or benevolent ET. So then I was like, up. I was like, oh my God, like these stories are everywhere, right? And it's important to note that listening to the message is more important than the messenger, because the messenger will present an illusion of what you want to see, and therefore you accept the message. Instead, listen to the message and not the messenger. So when someone's channeling an entity and they believe that it's their self, they feel entitled to harm another person, either by killing them, taking away their free speech, those kinds of things, demonizing another person so that they can be the hero. That's very narcissistic aka demonic. So that's a clue that it's a negative entity. Obviously, if you're hearing voices in your head telling you to kill another person, you might have gone off the deep end. But my point is, this woman was able to deceive a lot of people into also killing other people. Same thing with the guy running the cult in the 70s. He was able to deceive a lot of people, right? So then I start thinking about the Bible and my childhood, and I've mentioned several times, I grew up in Catholic school, which is, in my opinion, Satanism in disguise, the whole human sacrifice thing. My opinion, I think it's weird, to each their own. Okay? But there's a story of Abraham hearing a voice in his head telling him to sacrifice his son, Isaac, in exchange for, to prove you're loyal to God or in exchange for something, right? So we're hearing voices in our head that wants us to harm another individual in exchange for something. What does that sound like? Does that sound like Source? Does that sound like God? I'm also making this video because I know a lot of people are confused in the spiritual community. My experience, the most simple advice has always been the most powerful, and it's always come from like my inner being or my own soul, and maybe I've connected to higher spiritual energies, but it's never complicated. It never takes them hours long to explain everything. It's just a simple awareness, such as maybe you're in a relationship with a bad guy, bad girl, and you start to have a realization that's not love. It's that kind of thing. Not, we're gonna start new earth. Which, that is a thing, right? Like we all are building this reality together. But when you're connecting to an entity that's making you feel you're more powerful than other people, or exerting your power and control over other people, that's a bad sign. I wanted to say this, I posted this on Telegram. A message not to trust other people or trust other people's information is a message of manipulation. A message to trust yourself is a message of empowerment, right? So benevolent energies will always encourage you to look within, trust yourself, and even if you're wrong, you had that experience to know to get you back into alignment with your higher being, right? So it's all about self-empowerment, looking within yourself, trusting yourself, and that's how you liberate people. Anyways, sometimes I feel like that's common sense, but, hey, I'll say it again. There was something else I wanted to say. Okay, so maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there for critical thinking, maybe that the Bible is based off of people hearing different voices in their head saying they were God. So listen to the message, not the messenger. The story of Adam and Eve. I like a lot of these stories because if you apply them, some are in alignment with universal law, some are not. So the story of Adam and Eve. Basically, Adam and Eve were created in God's image, God's likeness. AKA, they are a part of God, they are a part of Source, right? And they have everything they need because they're in alignment with Christ, alignment with God, and alignment with Source. They are connected to Source, literally. And then comes the serpent. And the serpent says, I know something that you don't know. I know a secret. Do you want to be all-powerful, all-knowing, like God? Which God was the serpent talking about, right? Do you want to be all-powerful, all-knowing? It's important to note negative entities will always pretend to be all-knowing to hook you, right? So if you're connecting to an ET, extraterrestrials are just people like us, so their knowledge is also limited to their own experience, right? So if you're connecting to an ET that is all-knowing, that's a bad sign. An entity that is all-knowing, that's a bad sign. I also want to point out what else is all-knowing is the all-seeing eye, which is the symbol for the Illuminati, right? So the serpent tempts Adam and Eve But they choose through their own free will to eat the fruit. And what they did is they stepped out of an alignment with Source. So they did sin, because a sin is something that separates you from God. And if you are God, then you're separating yourself from yourself. So they ate the fruit, and because they separated themselves from who they truly are, they got cast out of the garden, and they created a karmic cycle where they would have to learn what happened, and through self-awareness, what had happened, to bring themselves back into the garden or bring themselves back to themselves. So I hope that makes sense. So a lot of that story is in alignment with the universal law of free will and the universal law of karma. You reap what you sow, that kind of thing. So I really like that story. And that's basically what happens when you decide to channel negative entities, is you, and it could be artificial intelligence posing as an extraterrestrial or God or whoever. So could be technology involved, but the message will always be the same. It will be contradicting. So, this group of spreading unity, we're love, respect, unity, except for those people. Fuck them. That's what the message will sound like. So it'll be conflicting, right? Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, that's it. Lots of love to you guys. I'll be back with more videos.